Welcome to Focal Points. Today we have the CEO of Extreme Microbial Technologies, Randy Mount, and he has some potential really good solutions to the bird flu crisis affecting our poultry and our farms. So, Randy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to go into what solution you have.
Well, thank you very much, Nicholas, for having me here. Here, give you a little background. Extreme Microbial Technologies created it, I do believe, back about 10 years ago or so. And it was all based around, mold remediation and indoor environments and looking at what we did there and, creating a healthy space. And then throughout the years started doing decontamination in food production facilities and then validations so constantly improving, adapting, and to what we could do. So when you look at energized hydrogen peroxide and just the what it does is pretty fascinating. And being able to deploy that, throughout any indoor environments. And so when you kind of look at what's going on with the bird flu, we worked several years back, we worked with the chicken hatcheries of, dealing with, ammonia in the chick's lungs and, the rate of diseases in those hatcheries and so forth, and work with them and showed a reduction and deaths in the hatcheries and the molds and a lot of other things. And then we got the H5N1 testing done and 99.9 on that. So when you're dealing with indoor controllable environments, that's something we are really good at. Whether it's going in and wiping out a listeria concern at a food production facility. So a lot of what we're doing in the being asked to go out and solve problems, and whether it's the hatcheries or the breeders or the hens or the egg producers, and dealing with that is all based around what we're doing on the production side for the they get into the production dealing with what we do with E. coli, salmonella, listeria, and those things. So everything that we've done is kind of like, we get that phone call says, hey, can you do this? And it's like, well, the testing and the data shows, but then get into that environment and deploy our technologies to what we do.
Well,
It's just,
that sounds absolutely fantastic, and definitely something. I mean, we need solutions to this bird flu crisis. I mean, we have farm after farm. I mean, the government's been depopulating them. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to control it. They're killing all the healthy ones. They don't know how to stop the chickens from getting it or reduce the spread. And so it sounds like what your company has developed, would possibly be very effective in controlling the spread of this, and in doing so, possibly preventing them having to murder all the birds. And so let's go into the slides you provided here of what you have here. So why don't you walk us through these slides?
well, this right here is when you kind of look at the first patent that we applied for and were granted. We're basically, to go in and analyze what's going on, determine what the load levels are, to look at what the effective process needs to be. And so we created a process patent, identify what's going on, and then eliminate what is there, and then a constant prevention program to maintain that environment, and then a monitoring program. So that's a 4-step patented process of for proven success. When you kind of look at how contamination is dealt with, where you're looking at going into the, like I said, you go into the breeder farms and into the barns and stuff, they go in and say, okay, we got dead chickens, we got this, we got that. Well, let's just go in there and eliminate the whole thing and clean the whole place up and then move everything back in. Well, they get a thumbs up because they took some swabs, some air samples, and they're all good again. Well, contamination happens because it's being introduced continuously throughout the day in and day out. 24 hours a day, contamination happens. And so when you look at the health and stability of chickens or any living organism, if they're constantly battling off pneumonias and molds and all those other things, and then when an H1N1 or an H1, 5 comes in, whatever those things are, their immune systems can't handle that. And so if you're constantly breaking those things down and providing a cleaner environment 24/7, and you're able to continuously, look at the prevention side instead of just, throw a nuclear bomb in there and let's start over. That seems to be the way that they look at everything. And, we saw this with the outbreaks of other, viruses and stuff. We've seen this with the swine flu and everything else. It's go in and drop a nuclear bomb, 2 thumbs up, let's say we're all good. But how about a prevention step? How about going in and do proper testing and say we got these 5 other things that are not a major problem, but they're contributing to the problem, and then let's eliminate, in a safe and effective way with the birds and the humans still in the room, because that's the way that we operate and our system works. And then let's install something to run 24/7 to constantly maintain a stable, good environment to prevent. Don't wait for the outbreak to happen. We get into food processing and they only call us after they've had a listeria outbreak and a recall. How about preventing it? How about
Right.
how about preventing it? The technology is in existence to prevent it. So why do we wait until we got to drop a nuclear bomb on and kill thousands of birds or thousands of pigs or whatever? How about
Right.
we just prevent it?
Right,
And
right. Why are we killing, hundreds of millions of chickens? Why are we disrupting the food supply chain? Why are we prolonging the H5N1 animal pandemic? Because that's all we're doing by dropping these nuclear bombs. We're not solving anything. And so, yeah, we definitely do need preventative solutions. And yeah, this chart here we're showing here. Yeah, look at all the birds affected. I mean, it's a very large number, and it's basically spread among a migratory waterfowl. So the problem is when you just destroy the whole flock, the new flock just gets reinfected
yep.
by the birds, the ducks flying all around the country, and so absolute disaster. So we need preventative solutions like the one you're proposing here, and let's see. So walk us through this. What's this reasonable assumption?
So when you look at reasonable assumption is that, we did all the testing on H1N1, great results on it. Well, when you look at the strain of that, I mean, it's it's the same cell makeup. And so, understanding that with the testing we did on H1N1, it would absolutely work on H5N1. And I know that if we ran the testing on it, we would get the same outcome. It's not when you look at all the testing that we've done, we've hit the highlights of the different cells and to understand what has a a lipid envelope, what doesn't. When we did testing on COVID and all of its surrogates and everything else. So when you look at what those results are, you know, we're when you look at what we do, we literally, through oxidation in an oxygen state, we blow that cell up, is what we do. And it converts back into oxygen and water is basically the outcome after we blow that cell up. So whether it's H5N1, H1N1, whether it's MRSA, whether it's staph, whether it's, C. diff, whether it's listeria, they all act the same way when you add that energized hydrogen peroxide to it. And we're creating trillions and trillions of those. So they're going out and seeking and destroying. All cells are either negative or positive. And so being a negative and positive, system, we go out and seek it and destroy it. We talk about reductions because the scientific world talks about log reductions and so forth. And so it's a constant reduction because there's a constant introduction of new stuff into that environment. So we're not trying to sterilize anything. We're trying to maintain a controllable environment to constantly, as you said, whether it's other birds or other things that are constantly coming in and creating that more contamination, you constantly got to fight it. It's when you're
Right.
air conditioning or heating a space, right? You just don't run the air conditioner for 15 minutes and say we're good for the week, because hot air is constantly being introduced in
Right.
if you're in a warm
Right.
climate. So you got to
Right.
keep on running that air conditioner to maintain that temperature level. And
Yeah.
that's no different when it comes to contamination. Contamination keeps coming in. So you got to keep lowering that.
Right.
Um,
And tell us, how does it work? So is this the device? Is this what it looks like?
How it works, when you look at the technology that we've created, basically we're taking air and humidity, running it through our patented cell, which is a honeycomb matrix made up of, different things to, create uh, the energy behind what we're putting out. So we're using a UV light that's specially designed for us. And when you look at bringing in that air and humidity into that and converting that and hitting that with that energy, that light source with the matrix combo that we've created, out comes energized hydrogen peroxide. So we're basically splitting the water molecule, adding energy behind it, and out comes trillions and trillions of hydrogen peroxide molecules. And at a very low amount, as we've gone in and we've run the test and proven it over and over in many different environments, we can never hit toxic levels in any way, shape, or form. So all we're doing is taking what already exists in the air and found a way to enhance it and multiply it.
So there's
And
no toxicity concerns at all with this? You've never seen any damages? It's just so it's completely safe in the tests you guys have conducted?
absolutely. As we worked with a car manufacturer, we put big units, small units, everything else in that confined space, and was able to prove that we put out trillions. But it basically self-regulates. So as it attaches on to molds, bacterias, viruses, and attaches onto them, it blows itself up along with that contamination. And so you're constantly introducing contamination in the environment and even into the clean rooms we're in. I mean, we're in sterile environments and IV compounding rooms and labs, and where they run basically zero on microbes. And we can never hit any toxic level. I mean, it's in my home, it's in my car, it's in my offices. I got a unit that travels with me. It goes in every hotel room that we're in, other than the hotels we install into, that are our customers. So we're continuously, you know, I mean, looking at, what we do. I mean, this is in my entire environment, everywhere I go. I went to the doctor. They couldn't figure out how my oxygen levels were as high as they are in me, because we created an oxygen enriched state. We're creating higher oxygen levels. We did a test. We did a huge decontamination project for catering ops for an airline, and every 2 hours for 3 months straight, they did testing in that environment to prove that we weren't going to be at any toxic levels. And what we found out is we increased the oxygen levels in that entire room by 12%. I
Wow.
mean, that's so making a healthier environment out of a really bad environment before we started. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, wow. I mean, so that sounds pretty neat there. No toxicity concerns and very effective at clearing out these pathogens. So what is this? This is a microscopic view of what it's doing to these
yes.
pathogens.
Yeah. So when you look at that, energized hydrogen peroxide interacts with the pathogen. I mean, step one, we're basically attracted to it, like a magnet. We're pulled to it because it's either negative or positive, and we're both. We're attracted to it. We're basically attaching onto it in that two, and then in three, we're basically blowing it up, and then it's all being converted back into water and oxygen. And we're not going to increase the humidity levels. There's not that much water involved, but we're basically just, that's what it reverts back to, a steady
Wow.
state of oxygen and moisture.
Wow. Okay. So, if our audience can imagine, so that's H5N1 bird flu, and it's everywhere in the barn, and the chickens are everywhere, and they're spreading it chicken to chicken. You introduce now this energized hydrogen peroxide. Um, that sounds like a pretty good plan. It's something that should be tested. And I would issue a call to any of our viewers that have access to a barn or enclosed spaces with these animals that are getting infected, and to let them try out this product and see how it works and fares against avian influenza, because this could really change the game here.
Yeah, this absolutely would change the game. When you look at, the testing that's been done, and designing and implementing a system into a barn, you know, it can be done very, I say very easily, but it can be done. We've been in some very unique situations and circumstances, and we always win at the end of the day.
Yes, yes, and look, so these are your third party validations here. So it looks like you've tested it against all these pathogens and it worked.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, I mean, when you look at the SARS-CoV-2, that was actually SARS-CoV-2. When you look at all the other people that did just the UV lights and the HEPA filters and all the other people that claim they make some ozonator or whatever, they tested on surrogates. They didn't test on the real deal. And so, that's, a surrogate is not the same thing. Some, farm raised, thing on a petri dish when we tested on the real thing. And when you look at what we do, here's just an example of four. We've done all kinds of testing. When you look at the, mold viruses and everything else, and molds and viruses, we've tested on many, many things. Um, and we always win. We always win. You know, if anybody was to ask me what's the hardest thing we deal with, I would have to say that everything we do is too good to be true, and that's what we battle every day. And but we win. We win at the end of the day.
Well, it sounds like you win. You beat all these bad guys, and it sounds like you can probably beat this avian influenza. And I definitely think, again, I issue another call. Anybody that actually wants to prevent avian influenza transmission among animals, I'd recommend you reach out to Randy here at Extreme Microbial Technologies and try this out and see if it works, especially any policymakers that are trying to think of solutions. So, Randy, our time is up here, but is there anything you want to tell our audience before we close out?
No, I just want to thank you, Nicholas, for your time and and this opportunity to spend time with you and meet with you. And what we do, we're in business to make a difference. And each and every day, we're in the people's business to go out and make a difference. And that's what we strive to do. And how can we reach the other people that truly want to make a difference with us? And that's I thank you for this opportunity, Nicholas.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.